I never thought that a Mother's Day post could end up being the final nail in my motherhood. At 9:42 a.m., I was sipping weak coffee on my porch in Hidden Valley when I saw Kayla's name flash on my phone. She'd posted a photo of brunch at South End with her mother-in-law, Susan, the woman I'd already paid too many invoices to impress. The caption read, "Happy Mother's Day to my real mom, Red Heart." A dozen likes and one comment in, I typed, "Then your real mom can pay for the $14,800 wedding invoice," and hit send, screenshot. Forwarded to Darnell Grant, my attorney. Subject line, documentation, social media post plus financial basis for withdrawal. That was the first time I ever used my daughter as legal evidence. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. My fingers went steady through every step, and I knew this was no misunderstanding. She meant it. I'd known something was off since April, but I kept wiring money, showing up to tastings I wasn't invited to, forwarding flower quotes she never responded to, told myself, she's just stressed. Weddings make people selfish. But that caption ended the excuses. Not just because she wrote it, but because she meant it enough to post it, tag Susan, and smile through the damage. 2 minutes after I sent the screenshot to Darnell, he replied, "Got it. We'll start building documentation. If you decide to withdraw, we'll need receipts and timeline of deposits. You'll want to act before the final venue payment date." I checked my bank app. Last payment was the $6,300 wire to the joint wedding fund 6 weeks ago. I scrolled back through Venmo, $850 to the cake vendor, $1,200 to the photographer, notes, gift from mom. I'd marked them all. Down the block, my neighbor Clarence walked his dog past my porch. He waved, paused, asked, "You good, Renee?" I nodded. I was no longer in mourning. I was in motion. I'm Renee, 62, retired property clerk for Charlotte-Mecklenburg PD, and 6 weeks before that post, I wired my final $6,300 from a Fidelity annuity into Kayla's wedding account, because I believed that's what a mother does when her child is building a life. She gives. I'd held off a week, debating it longer than I let on. It was the last flexible money I had before dipping into early retirement penalties. But Kayla had sent a voice memo, sweet and soft, saying, "Mama, it's the final piece. Once this goes through, we're good. I just want everything to be perfect." I played it 3 times. And then I logged into Fidelity, filled out the online release, and typed wedding into the transfer memo. No questions, no terms, just love. That same day, the planner texted me directly, thanking me for the payment. "We're so grateful to have your support." I sat in my living room, stared at that sentence, and felt the edge of something sharp under the praise, like I'd been made into a sponsor, not a mother. They wanted my wallet open, but my mouth closed. I told myself I was overthinking it, that maybe this was just how these things went, when you're marrying into a family with throw pillows for every season and a second fridge just for wine. That maybe this was how people with matching family photo outfits did weddings, clean, curated, with emotions smoothed over like fondant. But the more money I gave, the less I was seen. I didn't even have access to the shared fund I was wiring into. When I asked Kayla about it, she said it's just easier if Travis handles the logistics. He's better with numbers. I once spent 4 years logging narcotics evidence with chain of custody precision, testifying under oath, filing every gram by barcode. But now I was too fragile, too sentimental, too something to be trusted with a wedding spreadsheet. That wire didn't just drain my annuity. It rewrote the terms of my motherhood without my consent. Before that wire, there were signs I should have paid closer attention to. Subtle slights dressed up as jokes, deflections that only cut when I replayed them later. Kayla called me extra when I asked if I could help pick the table linens. "It's not that serious, Mom," she laughed, scrolling on her phone. "They're just napkins." It wasn't about napkins. It was about presents. I kept showing up, and she kept shrinking my place. I offered Grandma Celeste's brooch for her bouquet wrap, a small sapphire pin, worn smooth from years on an apron collar. Celeste wore it to church, to my graduation, even to the courthouse when she came with me to finalize the divorce. I still keep it in a black velvet box with her handwritten recipe for carrot cake folded underneath. Kayla glanced at it and wrinkled her nose. "I think we're going for a cleaner look," she said. "Something more modern." It wasn't just rejection, it was erasure by aesthetic. Still, I held back. Told myself, she's overwhelmed. She doesn't mean it like that. Then came the tasting. I'd been asking about it since February, kept my schedule open, even offered to drive to South Park, knowing traffic on Randolph would be thick that week. The morning of, I texted her, "What time should I meet y'all?" No reply. Around 1 p.m., I got a photo in the family thread. Her, Travis, Susan, and the planner smiling over crab cakes and little garnished ramekins. Caption, "Tasting day." I called. She didn't pick up. Later that night, she texted back, "I figured you wouldn't really vibe with the menu anyway. The chef's doing a fusion thing, stuff you probably wouldn't even eat. I paid the deposit on that caterer, $1,400. Venmo memo, final confirm." But apparently, my palate was too basic to taste what I was helping pay for. That was the last straw I let pass without confrontation. I didn't argue. I didn't demand. I simply stopped making suggestions. I sat across from Rochelle that night, the kitchen still smelling faintly of starch from the ironing board she never put away. She was in her housecoat, pink curlers pushed back like a crown, sipping Lipton and letting me talk until my voice cracked. I laid out every detail: the brooch dismissal, the tasting dodge, the rewired money. I even pulled out my phone and played the voice memo Kayla sent me about the $6,300, how soft and warm her tone had been. Rochelle didn't interrupt, just nodded slow, eyes narrowed, spoon tapping the side of her mug every now and then like punctuation. When I finished, she looked up at the ceiling like she was searching for the right phrasing in the drywall. "Nay," she said finally, "this ain't no accident. This is a pattern." Then she reached for the wall calendar behind her, still showing April though we were a full week into May, and circled May 12th in red ink like a verdict. "That's the day you stop making excuses for people who know what they're doing." I stared at the date. A Sunday. 1 day after the post. 2 days before my next payment to the venue was scheduled. My stomach sank, not from regret, but from recognition. I'd spent so many years managing other people's messes in that evidence room, keeping order, cleaning up behind chaos. I thought if I was meticulous enough, generous enough, loving enough, I could prevent damage before it happened. I built my motherhood like a case file, documented, airtight, no gaps in logic. And still, here I was, being rewritten out of my own story by people who smiled in public and bled me quiet in private. Rochelle didn't press. She got up, wiped her hands on a towel, and packed me a piece of pound cake wrapped in foil, like she used to after night shifts. No sermon, just support. That was what real care looked like. Quiet, specific, unfancy. She didn't need a brunch reservation to remind me I mattered. When I left, I looked back through her screen door. May 12th glowed red behind her head. I trusted Kayla because I raised her alone. From the moment her father packed his things and left a note instead of a conversation, it was just the two of us in that narrow rental off LaSalle Street. She was 3 and had a wheeze I didn't understand yet. I learned fast how to budget for prescriptions, how to fight with insurance reps, how to fake confidence at parent conferences when I was too tired to remember my own name. I gave her everything I had, not out of obligation, but instinct. A kind of ferocious love I couldn't name back then, only act on. I covered every bill from her scoliosis surgery when she was 14, including the nights at Presbyterian when she couldn't sleep flat, and I sat in the recliner with my hand resting on her shin. She doesn't remember the way she'd whisper, "Still there?" Every hour, even when the morphine made her slur, I'd answer, "Still here." And I was. Every time. Later, when Spellman offered her admission, I didn't hesitate. I had $19,000 saved in my state employee 457B, and I drained it the first year. I worked 3 extra years past my planned retirement just to finish out tuition and living costs, $81,250 total. I never asked her to calculate the sum. I didn't keep receipts to guilt her. I kept them because the IRS required it, not my heart. After graduation, she called crying because her offer letter came with a 1-month delay on pay. I wired her rent that same day. Then again, 6 months later, when she and Travis bought the condo on Tuckasegee and the down payment hit a snag. I didn't question the shortfall. I wired $11,000 clean. Memo line blank. When she offered to pay it back eventually, I said what I always did, just be happy. But now I realized she had learned to count on my help without valuing its weight. My giving had become so routine, it no longer registered as sacrifice. The first red flag I should have acted on came quiet. No raised voices, no slammed doors, just a moment that tasted off, like water left sitting in copper. Travis had called me Miss Renee before, back when they were just dating. Polite. Southern. I let it slide then. But at the meeting with the wedding planner, a sleek woman named Jordan with a metal clipboard and almond nails, it landed different. Miss Renee will just be observing, Travis said, then turned back to Jordan like I was a guest on a tour. Not Kayla's mom, not our sponsor. Just a soft boundary line. Miss Renee, outside the core. I didn't interrupt. I made notes. When the planner asked about cake preferences, Kayla jumped in before I opened my mouth. We already know what we want. Classic almond with raspberry fill. She glanced at Travis for confirmation. He nodded without looking up from his phone. Later that day, while we stood outside the cafe waiting on our cars, Travis said, "Oh shoot, we forgot our card. Can you just Venmo the deposit real quick, Miss Renee? We'll circle back tonight." I sent $850 before he finished his sentence. I had it queued from the planner's invoice email already. I told myself it was easier, that it was just one more gesture in a long list of quiet givings. But the next morning came and went with no refund, no acknowledgement, not even a got it. By Friday, I texted Kayla, all set with the cake payment, just confirming y'all took care of the receipt. She replied 4 hours later, "Yep, it's locked in. Can't wait for you to see the design, smiley face red heart." No mention of the missing money, no offer to reimburse. And I knew right then, I wasn't just funding this wedding. I was being converted into background noise. It wasn't the amount that stung, it was the comfort. How easy it was for them to treat me like a bank with a smiley face. And how easy I made it. Because love had made me sloppy. Because I thought their closeness meant I was included. 2 weeks before Kayla's post, I sat at the far end of the rehearsal brunch table at Dilworth Tasting Room, listening to the hum of clinking glassware and curated laughter. Travis's mother, Susan, had taken center position like it was a stage she built herself. Posture straight, pearls tight, voice sugar-coated with just enough tang to draw attention. "I've been handling the big decisions," she said brightly, folding her napkin as if to mark her territory, "since Renee prefers to support from the background." Then she turned slightly, raising her mimosa like a toast to absence. Kayla didn't flinch, didn't speak up, just nodded while sipping from her own glass, eyes on her phone, tapping something mid-scroll. That silence? It wasn't ignorance. It was permission. I looked down at the menu. Even though I wasn't hungry, I traced the embossed lettering like it might explain how I'd gone from raising a child on grit and prayer to being rebranded as a quiet backer. No one questioned Susan's claim. No one asked what support looked like in my case. Maybe they assumed I hadn't contributed much. Maybe they didn't care. Either way, that moment didn't just bruise. It categorized me. Made me small enough to forget. After the plates were cleared, Jordan the planner passed around an itinerary draft. My name appeared once, under the line, family guests. Not mother of the bride, not even host. When I pointed it out, she smiled like I'd misread it. "Oh, we're still finalizing. Don't worry, we'll elevate everyone properly." She used the word elevate like I was a garnish. Outside, on the sidewalk under trimmed sycamores, I stayed behind. I watched Kayla walk ahead, arm in arm with Susan, heels clicking in rhythm. They looked like they'd been mother and daughter for years. A matched set. I got in my car, pulled the visor down, and stared at myself. Lipstick smudged. Eyes tired. I wiped my mouth with a napkin and drove home without turning the radio on. I told myself I would stay gracious. That was the word I clung to, gracious, like it was armor, like it could keep me from reacting in ways that would only make it worse. I didn't storm out of the brunch. I didn't call Kayla that night and demand an apology. I simply waited, hoping the next email or message might offer some gesture of correction. It didn't. Instead, 4 days later, Susan sent the draft of the wedding program in the family group text. Her tone was cheerful, the kind people use when they've already made all the decisions. "Take a look, everyone. Let me know if you spot any typos, ring sparkles." It opened with a celebration of Kayla and Travis, followed by the order of service, wedding party, readers, musical selections. I scrolled slowly, eyes scanning line by line. Susan's name appeared under Welcome Message. Her husband was listed under Parents of the Groom. Then came the bridal side, Susan and Charles Whitman, standing in love. I wasn't there, not even a mention, not under hosts, not under acknowledgments. Nowhere. As if I hadn't raised Kayla alone, hadn't stitched together every year of her childhood with overtime shifts and quiet dinners over boxed mac and cheese. As if I hadn't carried her through every scraped knee, every loss, every hope. She wasn't erasing me accidentally. This was a decision, deliberate in its elegance. I stepped out onto my porch. The air felt sharp, not cold, just cutting in the way that makes you stand still. I didn't need Rochelle or Darnell or anyone else to tell me what this was. People forget things all the time. But names don't disappear from a wedding program by accident. They get removed. I stood there for a long time, not thinking, not planning, just feeling it settle. Not neglect, not oversight. Erasure. I walked back inside and opened the kitchen drawer where I keep my utility bills and donation receipts. I pulled out the file labeled Wedding Expenses. The brooch rejection had been personal. This was institutional. The morning after the post, Kayla left a voicemail. Her voice was cracked at the edges, like she'd cried for real this time. Not the quick tears she used to end arguments, but the kind that come after you realize something is actually broken. "Mama, I'm mortified. I didn't even write that caption. Travis posted it from my account. I was in the bathroom, and I didn't even see it till after, I swear." She paused, sniffled, then added, "I would never call someone else my real mom. You know that, right?" But I didn't answer the phone. I didn't call her back. I just listened to the message while seated at the edge of my bed, pen in hand, jotting the time of call, 7:26 a.m., into a lined yellow legal pad. I'd already forwarded the Instagram post to Darnell. I'd already printed the screenshot. The case file had begun. When I finally did call, my voice was steady. No rage, no accusations, just information. "Darnell has it logged," I said. "The post, the payments, the itemized receipts, they're all on file." She went quiet. Then came the unraveling, the justifications, the blame shifting, the soft begging I used to fall for when she was little, and lying about who broke the porch light. I didn't mean for it to come across that way. I didn't think it would hurt you like this. It's just, everything's been so tense, and Susan's been helping so much, and I guess I stopped her. "You guess wrong," I said. "But don't worry. You won't have to guess anymore. The money trail's clear now, and so are my boundaries." There was nothing left to debate. She'd crossed the line, not just with that caption, but with every small decision that came before it, each one dimming my place until I disappeared. I'd documented everything, from Venmo notes to forwarded emails, not to punish her, to protect myself. She could cry, blame, edit all she wanted. That evening, I lit the tall glass candle I keep beside Mama Celeste's photo, the one with St. Monica on the label, cracked halfway down, but still steady. I sat at my dining table with the lights off, just the soft flicker catching the corners of my legal pad. The voicemail was still on my phone. I didn't replay it. I didn't need to hear Kayla's trembling again to remember the pitch. What mattered now was what I did with the facts, not the feelings. I wrote one sentence. "I will not fund my own disrespect." No metaphors, no scripture, just that. I underlined it twice, tore the page out, and placed it under the stack labeled Expenses. That line wasn't for Kayla. It wasn't even for Darnell. It was for me, so I'd remember. Next time she called, next time she asked me to believe another story built on omission and charm, that this had nothing to do with emotions. This was about structure, about who holds the weight and who gets to drop it when it no longer suits them. At 9:10 p.m., I called Darnell. He picked up on the first ring like he knew I'd finally decided. "Renee," he said, calm as ever. "You ready?" "Yes," I said. "Let's proceed with withdrawal terms." He didn't ask why. He didn't offer condolences or say I was doing the right thing. He opened his binder, asked for the timeline of transactions, and told me to forward him any vendor contracts I'd co-signed or covered. "We'll need a clean paper trail before the 13th, he said. "Once we send the letters, the freeze holds, but only on what you funded. Everything else stays theirs to handle." "Perfect," I said. My voice didn't shake. I hung up and walked to my bedroom closet, pulled out the box of saved receipts and printouts, and started sorting by category: venue, flowers, catering, planner. The mess of it didn't overwhelm me. In fact, I'd never felt steadier, because now every dollar had a job, and that job was over. By mid-morning on the 13th, we had everything ready. Darnell's office drafted the revocation letters with surgical precision. No emotion, no gray areas. Just line items, payment confirmation numbers, and notice of cancellation. I reviewed each envelope twice before handing them off for certified mailing. Vendor by vendor. Florist, venue, planner, caterer. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control. I had funded what I could not shape. Now I was undoing it, legally and cleanly. The florist hit first. I'd covered a $2,300 deposit with a $4,250 balance still outstanding. In the letter, we canceled the remaining commitment, effective immediately, and requested confirmation of the adjusted order. That same afternoon, the shop's manager emailed to confirm they'd halt production. "Sorry to hear of the change, Miss Hamilton. We appreciate your clarity." Clarity. That word stuck with me. It felt like a small dignity restored. More than anything, I wanted documentation. Proof that I wasn't walking away in silence, but drawing a boundary with paper and ink. So I went to State Employees, Credit Union, and asked for a full statement on the joint wedding savings account I'd opened 3 months back. The teller was polite but hesitant. "It's technically a two-party account," she said. "But since the deposits came solely from your source and the terms were not bound by contract, you're entitled to freeze further contributions." "Do it," I said. "Today." She printed the freeze confirmation, date stamped and initialed. I folded it into my file behind the florist letter. By 3:45, the last packet had been dropped off with the USPS clerk. Certified, tracked, receipt signed. I kept every stub, every barcode slip. Each one a small weight lifted. These were no longer loose threads. They were records. I sat in the parking lot afterward and watched people move in and out of the post office. No one knew what I'd just undone. No one saw the shift. But I did. I wasn't just reclaiming my funds. I was reclaiming the pace of this narrative. It no longer belonged to brunch tables and group chats. By the time I woke on the 15th, I knew what came next. Not emotionally, logistically. Emotion had no seat at this table anymore. I spent that morning combing through every email, invoice, and text thread connected to the wedding. If it had my name, my money, or my fingerprints on it, I pulled it. I wasn't building a scrapbook, I was assembling evidence. The first folder I created on my laptop was titled Wedding File Proof. Inside, I saved PDFs of every transfer, Fidelity Wire confirmation, SECU deposit records, Venmo screenshots with timestamps and memos, each one marked gift or final payment. I went back through my texts with Kayla and flagged every request for help. Just a little more for the dress fittings. "Can you call the caterer and cover the difference?" She never said please. She knew she didn't have to. I printed the first 3 drafts of the wedding invitation, the ones I'd helped edit back in March before Susan decided cursive fonts were a bit dated. I found my notes on those emails too, suggestions I offered, designs I researched, the sample card I paid to have printed and overnighted. My fingerprints were on everything, and until now, I'd let them get wiped off. I backed it all up on a thumb drive, one of the small silver ones Clarence gave me last Christmas. I labeled it in red Sharpie and slid it into a manila envelope. Then I printed a hard copy index of every document in the folder, sorted by category, and stapled it to the inside cover. This wasn't a keepsake, it was my firewall. When I finished, I looked down at the pile and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Not because anything was fixed, but because I'd finally stopped trying to be palatable. I wasn't Kayla's smiling, non-intrusive benefactor anymore. I was a woman with receipts, with record-keeping, time-stamped clarity. I put the envelope in my fireproof box with my passport, birth certificate, and will. I didn't need to make a speech. That's what I told Rochelle when she offered to gather the family elders at New Vision AME. Just tell them I'm stepping down as host, I said. No drama, just facts. She blinked once, real slow, then nodded and pulled out her church directory. Rochelle had a way of carrying other people's decisions like she already knew the outcome. They just had to catch up. She made the calls one by one, sitting at her kitchen table with a notepad and a bottle of orange soda, updating each auntie and matriarch with the same calm tone. Renee won't be hosting the wedding anymore. There were changes. She's doing it the right way. Meanwhile, Clarence came by around 11. He used to work for USPS 32 years. No disciplinary actions, not even a missed route. I trusted him more than any courier service. He wore his old canvas bag like it still had purpose and took the withdrawal packets, 3 folders, 1 envelope, all labeled in bold marker, and loaded them into the trunk of his Buick like precious cargo. Venue, planner, caterer, I told him, in that order. He nodded. You want signed delivery confirmations? I want photo proof, he grinned. I'll get names too. By 2:15, the planner had signed for her copy at her shared office on Trione. At 2:45, Clarence texted me a picture of the catering manager holding his envelope, date scrawled across the flap. By 3:30, the venue receptionist posed with the final packet in hand, standing awkward in front of a fake floral wall. Every image went into the thumb drive folder. No disputes, no gaps. If this turned ugly, I'd already won on documentation alone. That evening, I cooked for myself for the first time in weeks. Not microwaved, not takeout. I boiled collards with smoked turkey neck, sliced a sweet potato, and ate slow with the TV off. The kitchen was quiet. My phone stayed face down. The morning of the 17th, I opened a new email draft. No greeting, no sentimental build-up, just a subject line. Wedding participation, conditions for attendance. I kept it clean, measured, legal in tone. If Kayla wanted to behave like this was a contract, then she would get terms. I stated clearly that I would not be attending the June 8th wedding unless 3 conditions were met, each one specific, dated, and non-negotiable. First, a revised program listing me as mother of the bride, with full acknowledgement of my role. Second, a written apology, not texted, not phoned in, a document. Third, a full reimbursement plan for the $6,300 wired from my annuity, the same fund I'd worked 4 extra years to build after tuition drained the first. I gave a deadline, May 25th. If all 3 were not satisfied by then, my only contribution to the wedding would be absence. I read it twice. I didn't edit, I hit send. Within 10 minutes, the read receipt pinged. I imagined them sitting there, Kayla on the couch, Travis behind her, maybe Susan nearby sipping her syrupy tea, scrolling through each line and trying to decide how real I was willing to get. I hoped they read it out loud. I hoped Susan's pearls tightened a little. That night, my landline rang. One of the few people who still used it was Susan. Her voice came slow, smooth, like a syrup that coats and clogs. "Let's not make this bigger than it is," she said, as if the issue was tone and not $12,000 in misappropriated love. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead. "I need to let you know," I said, calm as filing a form. "This call is being recorded. North Carolina's a one-party consent state." She laughed, sharp and sudden. "Oh, come on, Renee. This is about feelings, not funds." I let that sit. Then I ended the call. No explanation, no space for counteroffers. I logged the audio, saved the timestamp, added her quote to the file. If they wanted to build a wedding on erasure, they'd have to do it without my silence. They chose the bank, not me. Susan thought it would make everything feel more formal, more contained, as if the presence of a manager could sanitize the truth. I agreed, under one condition. Neutral ground. No one's house. No church. No cafe where somebody might perform civility for a latte. So we met in the community room at the Bank of America branch on Beatty's Ford. Long glass table, gray chairs, and a notary seated at the end with her stamp uncapped and ready. Darnell arrived first, briefcase tucked under his arm, folders color-coded. Contributions, texts, voicemails, programs. Kayla walked in behind Susan, chin lifted, wearing the same cream blouse she wore to her Spelman send-off. She sat without speaking. I noticed her nails were unpainted. The branch manager, a slim man with a shiny tie and polite discomfort, opened with a nod. We're here to facilitate a mutual understanding regarding recent financial contributions and requests for reimbursement. He glanced at me like he wasn't sure which one of us would burn the place down. Darnell slid the first folder across the table. Contributions. Inside, payment receipts, bank statements, Venmo screenshots, check images, and the wire transfer slip from my Fidelity annuity. Then came the folder labeled Instagram post screenshot with timestamp plus caption. He laid it flat and read aloud, "Happy Mother's Day to my real mom, Red Heart." He didn't add commentary. He didn't have to. The math spoke. Total maternal contributions to date, $14,800, he said, closing the folder. The manager raised his eyebrows, just enough for me to catch it. Susan, for the first time in all this, didn't speak. Kayla reached for the program folder. She didn't open it. She just held it there, fingers resting lightly on the cover like she could feel what it cost me. I stayed silent. I'd done the work. My power wasn't in performance anymore. It was in proof. No yelling, no tears, just the record. I had brought the receipts into a room where everyone had to sit still and read them, and for once, no one looked away. They didn't agree out loud, not right away, but silence in a room like that has weight. And this one landed on Susan first. She shifted in her seat, straightened the already straight stack of papers in front of her, then pushed them aside without a word. She knew. The folders had done what I never could in conversation. They dismantled her narrative, quietly, systematically, with timestamps. The notary asked if we needed time to deliberate. Kayla shook her head. "We've seen enough," she said, voice thin, but steady. Her hands were folded in her lap, and for the first time, since this mess began, she didn't look at Susan for approval. Darnell reviewed the updated program draft, a new version with my name restored under Mother of the Bride, centered, in bold. I asked to see it. Kayla passed it down without a word. It was plain, but correct. My name wasn't tucked into a corner or grouped with other guests. It stood where it should have been from the start. Next came the refund. The wire would be processed by June 1st, $6,300, returned in full. Darnell had the routing info ready, and the branch manager co-signed the agreement as a witness. I didn't celebrate. I initialed each page, date in the top corner, and returned it with the same energy I'd signed for certified mail. This wasn't a win. It was a correction. As for the apology, Kayla pulled a folded page from her bag. Handwritten. One sheet. She didn't read it aloud. Didn't ask me to. Just slid it across the table and said, "You can do what you want with it." I didn't touch it right away. The notary stamped the agreement. Susan stood, mumbled something about parking validation, and left first. Kayla stayed seated. She looked up at me once, but didn't say goodbye. When we walked out, Darnell placed the apology letter and revised program in the resolved folder and locked his case shut. No hugs, no reuniting, just closure with a paper trail. I walked to my car alone, but for the first time in months I didn't feel small. I felt finished. By June 1st, the wire hit my account, $6,300, cleared and confirmed by 9:18 a.m. I logged in twice just to be sure, then printed the transaction page and slipped it into the folder labeled Finalized. I didn't feel triumphant, just grounded. My money had come home, and with it, something else. My name. That same morning, the final version of the wedding program arrived by courier, white envelope, gold foil seal, no return address but clearly intentional. Inside, my name sat exactly where it belonged, Mother of the Bride, no asterisk, no apology buried in parentheses. I ran my finger over the letters once. Just once. Then I folded the page in half and placed it in the fireproof box with the rest. It wasn't something I needed to display. I only needed to know it existed. Later that afternoon, a small velvet box arrived by mail. No note on the outside. Just my name written in Kayla's handwriting. Still neat, still slanted left, like she'd learned in 3rd grade. Inside was the brooch. Grandma Celeste's sapphire pin, polished and reset, laid on top of a single thank you card. Thick cream cardstock, navy ink. The handwriting shook a little. I see it now. That's all it said. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't move me, but because there was nothing left to unearth. The hurt had been acknowledged, the record amended. The brooch, once dismissed as too old-fashioned, was returned without ceremony, just as it should be. I stood at the window holding it in my palm, sunlight catching the stone. No music, no monologue. Just me, the brooch, and the fact that every step I took back toward myself had been written, filed, and honored. I didn't attend the wedding. Not because I was still angry, but because the terms had been met and I no longer needed the performance. My name was back, the funds returned, the record corrected. There was nothing left to prove. The morning of June 8th, I swept my porch, watered the plants, and made a fresh pitcher of sweet tea. Around noon, Rochelle stopped by in her church dress, wide hat tilted just so. "You sure?" she asked. I nodded. "I've already been to the wedding, I just didn't wear heels." I watched the time pass on my kitchen clock, thinking not of the ceremony, but of every moment that had led to this stillness. Each signature, each envelope, each sentence I wrote that put me back in the center of my own life. Around 5, I sat on the couch and opened a library book. Nothing heavy, just something that had nothing to do with them. My phone buzzed once with a photo from Clarence, the program on a chair, brooch pinned to the ribbon-wrapped bouquet. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My absence wasn't empty. It was marked. It was mine.